British Overseas Territory, an irrelevant subject that I'm going to be covering today for the sake of views. Yay, views, something that I don't have very many of. Anyway, so today we'll be covering the British Overseas Territories. I'm just a small YouTuber who doesn't earn any money from this, so if you're not interested in this subject, please just click off, because, it's not going to be particularly interesting. It's not going to be a meme video or anything, so just don't click on this. The British Overseas Territories are countries or islands that are not part of the UK but are under the rule of it. For example, you have the Falkland Islands, which are far away from the UK but are owned by it and under the symbolic rule of the Queen. There are many different ones. For example, in North America there is Bermuda, in South America there are the Falkland Islands, in Europe there is Gibraltar, in Africa, well, there isn't actually one in Africa. In India, there's the Indian Ocean Territory. And in Australia, I'm sure there's some Cook Islands or something that are part of the Indian Ocean Territory. Also, actually, in Antarctic, there's this irrelevant one, which is used for scientific excursions and stuff. But that's beside the point. Today, we'll be talking about the best one, which is the Falkland Islands. Now, let me just say, the Falkland Islands are good for two things. First of all, their great performance in the cheese rolling event in Gloucestershire. And second of all, their sheep. That's just it. But I like the Falkland Islands. They're cool. They look interesting and everything. Their capital is Stanley, which is a rather large town. Their entire population leads up to only roughly about 3,000 people, which sounds like a lot, but when you're talking about a country, of course, there isn't very much. There are also only 2 airports, and there are 2 different sides of the islands with many different mud banks and things off the side. Now, of course, there was a Falkland War which took place in the 1970s, but that's all behind us now. Of course, the Argentinians are rather salty about this, but I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. Second of all, we have the second largest and most important, which is Gibraltar. Now, Gibraltar is south of Spain. It was kept so that the UK could have great control over the Mediterranean Sea. That's also why they kept large areas of Cyprus. The Mediterranean Sea was important in World War II because it gave them access to Malta, which was a great military airbase. Also, it gave them great waterways down to Africa, which at the time was a great source of supplies for the English. Now, as you can imagine, really early on, when there was the US, there was a thing called the British Empire, which many of you must be aware of. Now, the British territories are basically a lead-on of the Empire, except they're not nearly as big as they used to be. The British Empire used to cover a quarter of the Earth, but of course it's nothing that big today. In place of that, there's something called the Commonwealth, which is also a symbolic rule under the Queen of a group of countries. These consist of South Africa, Australia, and various parts of Africa. Anyway, so that probably didn't help you learn very much, but there they are, British Ocean Territories. You can fly to them, and in my gap year, I'm actually planning on going and visiting to all of them. Why? I don't know. Like and subscribe, please. I need subscribers' help.